Hello friends, welcome to my channel. I am JCM Byrne, author of Wistful Ascending and The Hybrid Helix, and this is Book Burning, a show where I talk about books and comics, sometimes movies, but I promise to never ever burn a book. Today's topic was part of a Twitter poll a few weeks ago. It came in last place, but figured I'd done the first two from the poll, and let's get to this one. And I might have skipped it entirely, but a couple people said they were particularly interested in this topic, and I thought, well, if people want to hear me talk, who am I to deny them? So I'll talk some more about this. And this is something I've thought about some, but you'll see what I'm getting at. Today's topic is, why is Rohan brown? Or why isn't Rohan white? Can't decide which would make a better title. Or who do you think you are? But we'll see. So, in case you weren't aware, this is my book, Wistful Ascending. It's a first person, not first person, it's the third person, but close third person. There's one major point of view in all the books, and it's this guy's. And this guy is Rohan, last name undisclosed, at least so far. And in case you can't tell from the art, you should be able to tell from the art, but in case you can't, Rohan is not, in fact, white. And if you read the books, you'll find out more about this, but I'll give some very minor spoilers. I kind of have to make this talk. But Rohan is half alien. That's why he's flying in space here without any kind of spacesuit or protection. Let me close this door before someone makes noise. See? You're getting real live video here. Mistakes and everything. I don't edit. I haven't figured out how. Sorry. As I was saying, Rohan's a half alien, which is why he can fly and punch giant bugs in the face and not just break his hand, all kinds of cool stuff. There's more about this in the books. His father is an alien, and when this particular species and humans interbreed, they get children with superpowers, basically. But his mother is canonically, she doesn't appear in Wistful Ascending, but he just talks about her. She is from the Telugu region of India. She had moved to Vancouver, where Rohan was born and raised. So he was raised by a mixed couple, his mother being human, but South Asian. So he thinks of himself as a South Asian person. His father was, while not human, his father, and this isn't really disclosed in the book, but I'm not really giving anything away either, but his father gave the appearance of also being from India, and that is how his neighbors in Vancouver, he was in hiding. The same way that Superman isn't, white from Ohio, but Clark Kent looks white enough that his neighbors just think he's a white dude from the Midwest, even though he's from Krypton. Same idea, different species. Okay, so the question is, why, Joe, did you make a character who is not white? And when you are, and before I continue, I think maybe it's obvious, should be obvious, I am not South Asian in any respect. As far as I know, my entire family tree is Caucasian, Eastern European originally. I was born and raised in New York City. I was born in Brooklyn. My mother was actually born in Poland. We're also Jews. I don't know if it matters, but we're talking identity, so identity is going to come up. I'm not particularly religious, but so I'm a white dude from New York City, basically, and my main character is not. So the question only makes sense if you have this sort of feeling that there's this default. This default would be an author is going to write what they know, and what do I know? I know what being a short chubby kid from Brooklyn is like. I don't know what being a half alien South Asian from Vancouver is like. Why did I write that? And I think there's a secondary line of questioning that arises that I think people are curious about, which is, you can phrase it a couple ways. What made it okay, or is it okay for me, white dude, to have written a story about not white dude? And we'll get to that sort of at the end. So I want to break this into two pieces. First, I want to talk about why I did it, like what was the motivation, my personal motivation for making Rohan who he is. And then the second part will be, why did I think that was okay, and maybe kind of a faux argument about whether it was okay, and then I'll wrap up. So first of all, I don't have any particular personal connection to South Asian, or I didn't growing up have any particular connection to South Asian culture in any way. Again, white kid from Brooklyn, it wasn't like My dad read me the Bhagavad Gita when I was a baby. My parents didn't flirt with Hinduism. I don't have any of those kinds of things you might imagine. Someone similar to me might have had that kind of connection. I didn't have close friends who were Indian that I had no real connection to the culture. If anything, I had a slight connection to East Asian culture. I got into martial arts relatively young. I read a lot of books about Zen Buddhism. Again, I'm not saying I'm an expert on Japanese culture or on Chinese culture, but I watched a lot of films. I read a lot of books. There was, if anything, I had the slightest connection to that, but not South Asian in particular. Never watched a Bollywood film in my household, and I don't even know if that was available at the time. Not the point. And this continued, and actually, my wife's family is from Bangladesh, and but she's not overly so cultural in the sense that she's not sitting. Many Bengali people feel a strong connection to Indian culture, Indian pop culture. They'll watch Bollywood movies, listen to Bollywood music, stuff like that. My wife was never really part of that for whatever reason. It's not her thing. So when we were dating, we weren't, yes, I was exposed to South Asian clothing. The clothes people wear in Bangladesh are very similar to the clothes people wear in certain parts of India, because Bangladesh is a lot more like certain parts of India than those parts of India are like other parts of India. India is big and very diverse, in case you weren't aware. But so I had some connection through our relationship, but not anything particularly deep. Then a few years ago, I was surfing Netflix, and you know how that goes, and I picked up some Bollywood movie. It was Krish, starring Hrithik Roshan. It's a fine movie, maybe not a great one. It's not one I'd recommend first. It's a superhero movie. I was like, I like superhero movies. I'm a big superhero guy. What's this? I've never heard of this. And I watched it, and I really liked it. And then you know how Netflix is. Once you watch one thing, it says, oh, if you like this, you might also like this other thing that's related to it. And it threw some Shah Rukh Khan films at me, and I thought, oh, what the heck? I must have been really bored or depressed. I don't know what made me watch Jab We Met or Kaho Na Ho, but I did. And through Shah Rukh Khan, I absolutely fell in love with Bollywood movies. And then once I had sort of milked that, now again, I'm not an expert on Bollywood. I'm not saying I've watched all the Bollywood films. That's not possible. I watched a good chunk of what was available on Netflix at the time, subtitled. That's it. That's the extent. I haven't pursued my love of Bollywood any further than that. I'm not an expert. I'm not an academic. Just a very casual enthusiast. And once I watched a bunch of Bollywood films, I branched out. I watched some Punjabi films. I watched some Marathi films. I watched some Telugu films. I watched a bunch of Tollywood films. I love Bahubali. Recently, I watched RRR, but this is going back a ways. I got really into it. And I found that these films really resonated with me for a variety of reasons. There are problems with Indian films, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of colorism. There's a lot of Islamophobia. I'm not defending that. I'm not saying it's okay. I just love them. In the same way that you can love Hollywood movies and recognize that they also have problematic aspects to them. And so I'm not saying there's nothing problematic about these films. I'm saying I really like them. So I got really into Bollywood films. I got really into Tollywood films. I learned to distinguish the difference. I'm sure I knew, at one point, I'm sure I knew 50 words of Hindi because I was watching so many movies, and they intersperse it with the native languages with English a lot for reasons I'm not going to get into. That's a whole other video. And it's a very interesting story, but we're not going to do it. And I fell in love with Indian the films. I fell in love with. I even like the sound of the languages. I like them. I don't know why. I like the music a lot. Like if I'm sitting in my car and I'm like getting tired and I want to put on music to wake myself up, I'm going to put on Bollywood tunes from on my Spotify playlist. That's what I listen to. I like Indian clothes. If I see an outfit, like if I see an Indian groom, dressed to get, I like that he looks good. That's my first thought. Much sooner than I'll think the same about like a tuxedo. I like the dancing, I can watch dance sequences from Indian movies all day long. That sounds weird. It's not really a thing I was ever into, but I love it. So I got really into I don't want to make too strong a point of this. I got really enthralled by Indian popular culture, with the aesthetics of Indian popular culture. And again, not saying there's nothing wrong with aspects of Indian culture. I'm not defending it. I'm not taking a stance on Kashmir or castes or colorism or women's rights. Please don't overinterpret what I'm saying. I'm saying if I my wife wants to make my day, she'll put a sari on, and I like that better than her wearing other stuff. Okay, if I want to listen to music, I'm going to listen to Bollywood music. I like Indian food. That's all I mean. Right? It's very superficial, on a very superficial level. And then on a less superficial level, but still somewhat superficial, I had sort of a storytelling, epiphany might be too strong a word, but a thought while watching some Telugu films. Indian films in general have a lot of overpowered main characters in the action films. Their heroes are often over the top in a way that, if anything, it reminds me of what American action films were doing in the 80s, which we still do, but maybe less so. And some Indian films really go over the top with it, and deliberately so. It's not bad filmmaking; it's an aesthetic choice. And I was watching some Telugu films, one in particular, and I realized that the main character was so competent and so good at what he was doing that there was never any sense of tension that he might lose. There was never that dark night of the soul that's supposed to happen in the second act of a story. And I was writing, and I was learning how to write stories, and I was being told by people talking about story structure, there has to be this time at the beginning of the third act where things seem hopeless. And I was watching these films, and I was like, there's a lot of films where it never seems hopeless. Main character seems like he's going to handle this. You're not really that worried that he's going to handle the situation. It seems pretty in the bag. You're just not sure how he's going to do it, how cool he's going to look doing it, or how awesome it's going to be, but you know it's going to happen, and you don't really feel that sense of dread inside. Oh my God, how's he going to escape from this predicament? That's not the aesthetic you get from some of these films. Yet they were, to me and to many people in the audience, I mean, these are big money makers, highly compelling. So it felt like these films were breaking a rule of storytelling that I was hearing, and yet they were working. So someone's wrong. And I was fascinated by this, and I adopted this idea to a lesser extent, in that in my books, you know, the main character is kind of highly competent, and you should rarely feel like he's about to lose or that his situation is hopeless. You might feel this looks somewhat, precarious. Wonder how he's going to get out of this, but you shouldn't feel the sense of dread like this seems impossible that he could possibly win. He's lost. You shouldn't ever feel that sense. Hopefully you're still being drawn through the story by some sense of curiosity. How's he going to win? What's he going to do? Some sense of wonder, what's going on? There's some questions have been raised I want the answers to because I'm curious, but less of the sense of fear and anxiety driving you through. It seems hopeless. I need to see how it's resolved. It's a different storytelling engine. And I got this from Telugu films. I'm not saying they're unique to these films. I'm not saying that all Tollywood films work this way. Many don't. Bahubali, there's some dark times in Bahubali. There's some low points. RRR, there's some really low points in RRR. I'm not trying to overgeneralize. I'm saying I got this notion of storytelling personally from particular films that I was watching that happened to be made in the Telugu region. And so I wanted to sort of pay homage to this. I'm like, I got this idea from a particular culture. Not saying it's only present in that culture, but that's where I took it from. I want to pay honor to that. I want to pay homage to that. And so I got this main character, and I gotta be honest, there's not much in this book that I would have had to change to make Rohan like a Jewish kid from Brooklyn, right? There's not much in the story and the plot line that really rests on him being particularly half Asian or half South Asian. It wouldn't make a big difference to the storyline or to his personality. I mean, he was raised among white kids in Vancouver. Is there anything particularly Vancouverian about him? Probably not. I could probably change all that and give the book to someone, change probably 15 sentences, hand it to someone, who had never read it, and they probably wouldn't notice. They wouldn't go, this character doesn't act like a Brooklynite. No, that's not what the book's about. But in superficial, the same way I put other things that I personally have an affection for, I put in the book in other ways. I like tequila, right? Tequila is one of my favorite liquors. I'm a bourbon guy, but I'm more of a tequila guy. So Rohan likes tequila because, generally speaking, that's my default decision tree when I'm writing is I'm going to put the things that I love in the book. If I like giant monsters, so I put giant monsters in my book. Did I make sure that they fit in with the rest of the storyline? Sure, but when I have a choice that's not meaningful, that's not going to impact the story. Is he going to drink tequila or bourbon? I'm going to pick tequila because I love tequila. He had to be from somewhere. He had to have a color because I had to tell the cover artist what to do with his face, right? So I could have made him white, but I wanted to show respect and show honor to the Telugu origins of some of the storytelling ideas, so I made him brown. And that was it. That was my personal motivation for making this character not white. Did I think it would sell more books? I hope it would, but I gotta be honest, I always felt it would, if anything, the other would happen. I always felt I would have been easier to sell this book as a white dude writing about a white guy. I'm not saying I'm a huge martyr that oh my God, I made this creative choice and ended all my financial ambitions. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I don't think it really, I never really believed it would help very much. If it did, that'd be fantastic. If a bunch of people in India start reading this book and like it takes off and I make a ton of money there, that'd be great. I don't really think that's going to happen, and that wasn't the plan. I mean, again, it'd be light, it'd be nice, but it's not the plan. Was I trying to improve representation? I think representation in general, like having, a diverse cast of characters in storylines in general, in different properties, is a good thing in general. Was that my mode? And I thought, so once I made the decision, I was like, yeah, it's probably nice that I have a superhero who's Asian in this book, and maybe that's not the most common thing. But that wasn't really what drove me to do it. It was more of and after the fact, I was like, yeah, it's probably a good thing, whatever. And it wasn't really a motivating factor, but it wasn't didn't detract. It didn't make me not want to do it. So that was my reasons. That's why Rohan's not white, even though I am, very clearly. So then we get to the second sort of question, or the side question, or the implied question. No one's actually come to me and said, Joe, you should not have done this. So if I'm going to defend my choice from someone, I'm defending it against nothing. Because no one has actually come to me and said, you as a white dude should not be writing about a not white guy. No one's actually explicitly said that to me yet. If you want to say that, comment section, go ahead. Tweet at me, whatever you want. I'll listen. But so if I'm defending my choice, I'm sort of defending it against something nebulous, which is I'm imagining why someone might say that and then defending myself against this imaginary argument. A little bit of straw man feeling to it, but that's all I have to go on right now. I had one person or several people on a forum say, I clearly need to be educated on this. When I said that I'm going to have a South Asian main character, even though I'm not, they said, well, you clearly need to be educated on this topic. But that was all they said. They didn't say you can't do it, or you shouldn't do it, or why I shouldn't do it. I did pursue education. I read a bunch of books on writing the other. I read a bunch of, not books, a book or two, a bunch of articles online. I went to different forums and tried to read about how to represent the other, how not to represent the other, good things to do, bad things to do. I did what I could, but I didn't go so far as to hire a team of sensitivity readers or take a college course on the topic, so maybe I missed something. So my thought is, when someone is going to say, Joe, you shouldn't have done this, what I imagine the problem is that they think what I'm trying to do is tell a story that is representative of South Asians in some way. So people do tell stories where the point of the story or of the character is to help us understand a typical experience for people from another culture. I'll give you, I can't think of a good example for South Asians, but I'll think of one for Black people in America, which is The Wire. The Wire was I love that show. But I think a lot of the points of the characters in The Wire weren't so much that these were great characters. They were great characters on their own. But that many of the characters had experiences that were very typical of people in Baltimore. Specifically, people of the specific races and socioeconomic classes, both black and white, in such a way that, like, if you watch The Wire, you couldn't race swap the characters. The characters wouldn't make sense anymore. They wouldn't have reacted in the same way. They wouldn't have had the same experiences if the white people had been black and the blacks had been white. You'd have to rewrite the script. It was trying to tell us something generic about what it's like to be a black person or a white person growing up in Baltimore, and how race affects the lives of people in general. Not just the characters were never, most of the characters aren't supposed to be special outliers who are wildly atypical and are nothing like the common people of Baltimore. And that was the point. You would watch The Wire and gain a deeper understanding into not fictional characters who are weird and outliers, because who cares, but into what elements of their experiences would help you learn about these elements that are common to people, real people living in Baltimore that you might, or living in American cities that you might know. And that's a fantastic task to undertake, and I'm all for it. I'm all for watching shows like that and trying to understand other cultures through fictional characters, trying to see, to write a story like that, you have to take a character and you have to give them experiences that you feel are typical of their, whatever group they're identifying with. I'm sure I know people who've written stories about, homosexuals, and they're a gay main character, and they're trying to tell us something about what it's like to be gay in the modern world. They're not just saying, oh, this guy happens to be gay and he's doing stuff, and the stuff has really nothing to do with him being gay. They're trying to show us some of his experiences that they feel are very representative of experiences that gay people in our society go through very commonly, so that someone like me could read that book and go, I never really knew what it might, I never really thought of what it might be like to be gay in America and being raised. Maybe I would understand a real gay person a little better through the vehicle of this fictional character. Those are wonderful stories. That's a fantastic thing. I'm not writing those stories. I'm not qualified to write those stories. First of all, I'm straight. I'm also white, right? I can't tell you what it's like to be South Asian growing up as an immigrant. I don't have that experience, but it's not supposed to be. I'm not trying to convey that. This character is not supposed to be a sort of, he's not supposed to have experiences that other South Asians, even other South Asian children of immigrants growing up in Canada, should relate to. He's supposed to be weird because his father's an alien who raised him to be a soldier in an interstellar war. Father, very domineering father, not from this planet, who deliberately isolated him from his own culture. In other words, he's not typical Telugu kid from Canada, right? He's atypical in every way, and he has a very weak connection to his native culture. And I deliberately did that. I don't think I could write a fair and just story about a sort of normal guy from a culture that's so different from mine without really sitting down and spending a lot of time, maybe not at all, but certainly not without spending a lot of time sitting around and talking to people who have been through that experience, which I haven't done. Do I know more about, say, South Asian culture? Probably. I know a lot more about, say, South Asian culture than I did 7 years ago. I watched hundreds of hours of South Asian movies and TV shows. I know way more than I did 7 years ago. Am I an expert? Is it equivalent to me being from that culture? It's not. I'm not trying to say it is. And I could not, I don't think I should be telling a story of a quote unquote normal, typical person from that culture. And this main character, Rohan, is not representative of that culture. Again, the predominant forces shaping his personality, his history, and his upbringing are alien superpowers bred to be a soldier, not moms from India. Where Moms from India has an effect, and it affects some of his aesthetic choices, it affects some of the food he likes, the music he listens to, but not that much more than that. So that's my defense. My defense is, did I do a bunch of research? I didn't, because I'm not trying to tell a story about a normal Indian kid. I'm trying to tell a story about a kid who happens to have an Indian heritage, but it really is a half alien, and that's the prominent narrative thrust of his character. Is it okay for me to do that? I don't know. If you think it's not, go to the comments section. Tell me why it's not. Tell me why I did something wrong. Give me a rule that you think is a fair rule to apply to situations like this. Do you think white people should only write white characters? Do you think white people shouldn't write at all? Whatever you think, let me know. But if you're going to make an argument, it's an argument. I can disagree and I can try to poke holes in it, and I'm going to try to think of counterexamples that you're not covering. That's how arguments work. If you just tell me you didn't like it, okay, lots of people didn't like it. I have the 1-star reviews to prove it. but I will listen and I will take seriously any such comments, and I will promise to really think about them. Now, I did one thing where I totally screwed up, and no excuse, I screwed up, and that is I needed an interjection for Rohan, something for him to say when the crap was about to hit the fan. And in my culture, everyone I know would say like, Jesus Christ, like if something's about, like, imagine you're looking up and you see a car accident about to happen, two cars, and it's like icy out, and one car's about to slide and they're about to hit. What are you gonna say? People I know, my culture, my background, Jesus Christ, and you flinch, right? So I needed something for Rohan to say, and I didn't know what a person, and I imagined him as a kid not wanting to say Jesus Christ because he's not Christian and he's not from that, and something to differentiate himself. You know, I'm going to use expression from my people. And I did a little bit of research. I asked some coworkers who happen to be from that part of India, and I never really got I didn't get a great answer. Not my fault, not theirs. I wasn't expressing myself well. And at some point, I was watching like a Conan show. I don't know how I came up with it. I came up with the idea that he would say Rudra's braids. And I think I was influenced by like the idea of Conan, like Crom's beard, or by Crom or something, but it wasn't Crom. I would use Rudra, which is a figure that a Telugu person might be more likely to reference in that context. And I don't know where I got the braids from. I wish I remembered exactly. I think I misread a lyric from a song in Bahubali, and then I looked it up in Wikipedia and saw something about a statue of Rudra and something about braids, and I thought it was clever. And it wasn't clever, it was just kind of stupid. And I eventually got hooked up with a sensitivity reader, Sridhar Avalar, who's a friend of a friend, who was gracious enough to read the book, and he came back and he's like, Joe, it's just dumb. And I'm not quoting him. This is the gist of what he was saying. I don't think he found it incredibly offensive as much as just sort of stupid and didn't sound right or accurate to what an actual person with Telugu heritage might say. It was just dumb. And I felt really bad. I still do, and I'm very sorry. If anyone was offended by it, I am very sorry. I don't really have an excuse other than I ran out of resources to figure this out. I have changed that in recent editions of the book. So if you buy the book today, you won't see Rudra's braids in there anywhere. I think it's still in the audiobook. I don't have the resources to change that right now. At some point, I will get that fixed. I changed it to, and I think other things would have worked. Like Ayo might have been more authentic, but also not as recognizable for what it means to someone who's not connected to that culture, which most of my readers are not. Most of my readers are, white Americans, as far as I can tell. So I made a mistake. It was poorly done. I'm trying to fix it. I am sorry. And I should have more strongly tried to find a sensitivity reader earlier. It was tough. If you try to hire a sensitivity reader online, it's a whole discussion we can have. It's like $1,000, and I don't have I blew a lot of money on this. I don't want to blow another 1,000 to see if like the 3 lines I was worried about were actually problematic. I didn't find Sridhar until after the first 2 books were released. He was kind enough to read them and give me that feedback, and I made a change. And I should have, and I honestly, when I put that in, I kind of meant it as a placeholder until I found something better, and then I forgot. It's not really an excuse, but there it is. So that's a story about why Rohan's brown, a sort of tentative defense of that choice in case you find it offensive. But if you do, tell me why. Tell me what. I'm arguing with nobody right now. No one's told me I shouldn't have done this. But if you were curious as to why I did it, that's exactly the reasons are the first half of the video. Right? I did it out of love for superficial aspects of Indian culture, and I wanted to express that. I wanted to pay a little homage to that, saying everything in this book is about things that I love one way or another, and that's how I write. That's a guiding principle for a lot of the choices I make. But this was a genuine love and respect for Indian pop culture, and I meant it as nothing else. I really hope no one took anything I did there as dismissive or negative, or as putting anything down. And if I say he's listening to Bollywood music, believe me, I don't mean anything negative or pejorative by that. I listen to Bollywood music. It's my preferred listening material. When I'm not listening to podcasts, if I want music, that's what I do. That was the intent. That was what I was trying to convey, and nothing else. So that's it. This is take two. I keep screwing up my phone. Hopefully this came out this time. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had some thoughts. Share them with me. Leave some comments. If you have any other further topics you want to see me address, I'm sure I have others in mind. I'll get to them at some point. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you watch more videos. I hope you read my books. But if not, I hope you find other books and other properties that you enjoy that you can indulge in. And I hope you love them. So take care and bye.